Welcome once again to each and everyone. Here at the British Council, we proudly celebrate International Mother Language Day on 21st February, a day dedicated to recognizing and valuing the multilingual nature and cultural diversity of our communities and classrooms. This occasion also highlights the crucial importance of preserving and promoting Indigenous and minority languages. A key part of our commitment is to foster multilingualism by conducting research and publishing reports and findings. Besides this, we also promote integrating these practices into our framework of 12 continuous professional development practices for teachers. By embracing multilingual approaches such as code switching, translation, and translanguaging, we encourage teaching and learning strategies that foster inclusive education. So, with that, let me then introduce to you our speakers for today's workshop. Our first speaker, Sonali Bhattacharya, is an English language, communication, and soft skills consultant, as well as a teacher, educator, and content developer. She holds a doctorate in applied linguistics and a postgraduate diploma in the teaching of English language from English and Foreign Languages University, Hyderabad. With over 15 years of experience, Sonali is a certified trainer for the Oxford's Teachers Academy and OUDCE in the UK. Her experience also involves serving as a teacher trainer for the US Department of State's English Access Micro Scholarship Program and the Fulbright Nehru English Teaching Assistantship Program. She has developed teaching materials and online courses for Oxford University Press, India, and conducted several professional programs for teachers through organizations such as Cambridge University Press and Assessment Teacher Support Programs, CENTA, and ELTAI. Additionally, as a consultant with the British Council in India, Sonali has contributed to various teaching and training monitoring evaluation initiatives. Our co-speaker for today is Suyog Ashokrao Dixit. Suyog is a teacher educator and English language education enthusiast, currently working as a language resource person for the Azim Premji Foundation. He has been actively involved in various teacher development initiatives with government and non-government institutes, serving as a module designer, teacher trainer, and tag coordinator. He has worked as a material and digital resource creator for teachers in Maharashtra and Rajasthan. Suyog also volunteers for the INET Association of India, managing its social media handles as an INET Connect project associate. He has presented his studies at the 5th, 6th, and 7th INET International Conference and the 56th IATFL Conference. As a Hornby scholar, he has completed his MA in TESOL from the University of Warwick with distinction. His research interests include teacher leadership, translanguaging, and the socio-linguistic aspects of English language learning. With that, I request Shani and Suyog to take over.
Thank you, Titiksha, for that introduction. Well, welcome and good afternoon to everybody. Welcome to our Teacher Connect workshop. Today, our workshop is going to focus on a topic which is being talked about very animatedly by schools, teachers, parents, and even students, simply because they are beginning to see the very many possibilities in encouraging the multilingual classroom. So let's get on from here. We are going to talk about 3 very practical translanguaging strategies for the multilingual classroom, which you will find very useful, hopefully, in your classrooms. So let's take a look at what we are planning for today, the overview. So today we are going to talk about multilingualism. We shall begin by re-looking at 4 beliefs 4 popular beliefs that some people often have regarding the use of a mix of languages when teaching English as a subject or using English as a medium of instruction in the classroom. Then we will explore a phenomenon called translanguaging and explore how it can be used in the classroom and classroom teaching. Following this, we will share 3 strategies as we promised, focused on the primary, preparatory, and the secondary levels, each substantiated with an activity. Of course, we will look forward to your comments and your reflections after each of these strategies so that you can share more with us. Now, much of Asia is a very linguistically diverse continent. If you live in India, for instance, you are exposed to so many languages all at once, and you may be the proud juggler of many languages yourselves. So let's take a quick poll and see how many languages you know. So you could be knowing just one language, you could be knowing 2 languages, or maybe more than 2 languages. Wow, look at that. Oh my goodness. Mohammed Rizwan says 7 languages. So most of you, it looks like you definitely know more than 2 languages. Isn't that amazing? All the more reason for us to try out multilingualism in our classrooms, right? Well, 25% of you do know 2 languages, and 75, wow, that's a whopping amount, a whopping number, right? So you know more than 2 languages, 5 languages, 4 languages. We are all very, very impressed. Can we share the results?
I already shared those, Sonali. Like you said,
Okay.
25% people who took the poll were
Mm-hmm.
able to are able to speak 2 languages or they know 2 languages, and the remaining 75% who polled mentioned that they know more than 2 languages, and the chat is buzzing with it's going towards the 75% side. There are clearly people who know more than 2 languages.
So that just proves the point I just made, right? That everybody knows so many languages in this continent, and we're moving beyond our own continent. So let's look at some of the beliefs that people popularly have. Suyog, let's take the first one.
Thank you, Sonali, and nice to see many familiar names in the participants list. So let's start with the first belief that I think many of us have. So the belief is in front of you on the screen. What you are going to do is see if you agree with this belief or no, and what is the reason behind that. Like if you agree, why do you agree, and if you don't, why you don't agree. All right, so please use chat box to share your opinions. Let me read that belief aloud for you. The belief is using other languages in the classroom will confuse students. So see if you agree or don't with this belief, please use the chat box. And I'm also keeping an eye on the chat box. So no, it won't confuse them. Okay, there are okay. Okay, sir says yes, but many says no. I don't think so. No, don't agree. Okay, so we have many nodes judiciously, and that is really good, Anil. I appreciate that. Yeah. Okay, interesting. Yeah. Okay, let's see what the research says. So, as we know, if we use these languages judiciously, as Anil said in the chat box, it helps students to understand the concepts better and clarify them, as it reduces the cognitive load. All right, like there are two processes happening. One is about language and another is about content. So if we use the two languages effectively, where the content is delivered in a language where student is more comfortable and language is focused on in language type of exercises, that reduces the cognitive load, helping students to understand the concepts better. And it also helps students to connect the new knowledge with the previous knowledge that they know in their own language. So if we use these two languages in the classroom, that does not confuse students. On the contrary, that helps students to understand the concepts better. And with that, let me pass it over to you, Sonali.
All right. So let's move on to the second belief that many people do have. Exposure to only English, exposure to only English will make students fluent faster. What do you think? Do you think it makes them fluent faster? Put your ideas in the chat box. Disagree. Some agreements, partially disagree. Immersion works. I think by and large, most of you don't agree. Some with a little bit of a reservation, with a pinch of salt. All right. Very interesting. Yes, depends on understanding of the language. Not in ESL and EFL contexts. That's an interesting point. Depends majorly on the cognitive level of the students. That's the caveat that we'll have to keep in mind. All right. So let's see if we can debunk some of these ideas. Maybe we could tweak a few of them. So, yes. So if you look at the first point, take a look at the first point. Well, students tend to get disengaged due to a lack of understanding when English alone is used as the medium of instruction or explanations. They may not even understand the context. Some of you did mention it, right? And look at the second angle. Contrary to belief, the presence of a familiar language to fall back on, right, allows the learner to construct new knowledge on top of the prior knowledge. That's something that Suyog just mentioned. So that way the cognitive load is kept lighter. This lends confidence and eventually boosts the use of English, right? And the third point, fluency develops through understanding, not immersion alone. Yes, fluency develops through understanding and not just engaging with activities alone. Once the basic concepts are understood, it becomes easier to use English. Just letting the student engage in speaking activities, English speaking activities alone will not build fluency, right? So that was the second belief. Let's move on to the third one.
This is the third belief in front of you on the screen now. Again, please use the chat box and see how you respond to this belief. So far, the responses are really nuanced and it's interesting to read the responses. So let me read this belief for you now. Mixing languages in the classroom shows poor teaching practices. So what do you think about this? Disagree? Yes. Don't agree? Okay, disagree, not necessarily good. Okay. So majority of the house disagrees with this belief. Okay. Let's see what we have in here for us. Okay, this is something that our national education policy also advocates, that using students' home languages to teach the new language, it is effective and not poor, as the belief was saying. Even the Nipun Bharat guidelines also mentioning using students' home language to introduce new languages to the students. All right. So instead of taking the second language or the home language as a hurdle, we can use that language as a resource and which has been proved effectively in multiple contexts. Even in national education policy also mentions various contexts where this strategy has been proved in India as well. So as some of us might think that mixing languages is poor, contrary to that belief, using these languages effectively tells us that the teacher is doing good in the classroom. And on that note, it's you, Sonali, again for the fourth video.
Thank you, Suyog. Now, the fourth belief is that multilingual strategies are too difficult to implement. So people are a little, apprehensive about using them. What do you think? You are the practitioners. So are you able to take it to the classroom? No, not at all. Not at all. Isn't that lovely? So it looks like all of you have a lot of drive and you're willing to try out new strategies. So we hope to learn a lot from you. No, wonderful. So I think that's a unanimous no out there. Maybe we have a maybe there. Easier and faster because they are allowed to use their own languages, the confluence of languages. I love the word there. Right. So then let's see if any tweaking is needed here. Okay, so how would we counter something like this? When students, you see, they come from diverse linguistic backgrounds and they are more comfortable using the mother language rather than English, these languages can be blended strategically with English in many ways to increase fluency in English. Right? And you would have to know those strategies, of course. You might have to be trained in using those strategies. One might use multilingual resources, for instance, or multilingual participation within a peer group, or a combination of languages when your students are processing or they are in the production stage. So see, there are so many strategies. Now, these strategies involve a very, very interesting phenomenon called translanguaging. So I think we would want to know a little more about translanguaging from Suyog.
Thank you, Sonali. So as Sonali said, and as the title of the workshop also suggests, we are going to discuss about translanguaging. And like, instead of we giving directly what that means, let's see a couple of classroom scenarios and try to see if you think there are some elements or characteristics of translanguaging in these classroom scenarios. All right. And then we can go to how the translanguaging thing goes. All right. So here's the first classroom scenario in front of you. Again, your task is the same. Just go through that and see if you can find there are some characteristics of translanguaging involved with this example. All right. Again, please use the chat box if you think there are some characteristics. And if you think there are not, again, you can also share that as well in the chat box. And with that, let me read this example for you. Students are tasked with writing a story about their favorite festival. One student begins the story in English, but incorporates words and phrases from their mother tongue Odia to describe unique cultural elements like food, rituals, or emotions that do not translate. The teacher supports this by helping the students explain those terms in English to the rest of the class, allowing everyone to learn about the culture while appreciating the linguistic blending. Now, as you heard this example, do you think there are some elements of translanguaging involved in this example? Okay, the use of ODI words is the emotions, ODI terms in English, translation, student blends English, really good expression, yeah. Cultural appreciation, okay. Okay, so majority of the participants think that there are some elements of translanguaging in this example. In other words, this example characterizes a few things in translanguaging. Let's see the next example as well, Sonali.
So we have another scenario here. During a science lesson on ecosystems, the teacher explains a complex term like photosynthesis in English, but encourages students to discuss it in their home languages to deepen their understanding. Some students use Hindi to explain the concept, others use Tamil or Marathi, and they all eventually translate their ideas back into English to complete their group project or assignment or whatever it is. Now, do you think that this example characterizes translanguaging? Do you think so? Or you don't think so? Yes. Sajidur says no. So if you could also tell us why you don't think it's translanguaging? Yes. Yeah, they're using their prior knowledge and they want to, they will be bouncing back to English once they have processed it and constructed. Very good. All right. So now that we have a basic idea, Suyog is going to tell us, share the definitions, a couple of definitions with us.
Thank you, Sonali. So here goes the first definition. Let me read it out for you. Translanguaging is the practice of using multiple languages flexibly and interchangeably to help students understand, process, and express concepts. It leverages the students' full linguistic repertoire, allowing them to draw from their native languages while learning English. Uh, so, as you can see in this definition, you can find out there are multiple terms that are significant. So, which of these terms you think are important in this definition? Please use the chat box. What terms you think are really important from this definition and that are helpful to understand what translanguaging means? Linguistic repertoire, yeah, that means all different languages and the knowledge of structures, vocabulary, and grammar, everything the student has about different languages. That's what we call linguistic repertoire. Yeah, using languages flexibly and interchangeably, absolutely. So this is a big characteristic of translanguaging, that we use languages, named languages, flexibly and interchangeably. Okay, understand, process, and express concepts. Nice. So these are different terms that helps us characterize better. And with that, let's go to the definition. Languaging refers to the combination of two or more languages in a systematic way within STEM learning activity. Again, as you can see in this definition, what terms you think are important? Second, combination of two or more languages. Okay. Yes, vocabulary. Okay, systematic way and learning activity. So that learning activity brings in a bit of pedagogy, which is there as well. Some of the scholars say.
So you
Okay,
just
so
wanted
this is
to, sorry, so you just wanted to come in here to read out a Facebook comment from our participant called Fanny Brown. And they say that for multilingual students, this isn't difficult at all. For multilingual students and teachers, this comes naturally and isn't difficult at all, is one of the comments on Facebook.
So I'll just address this comment and a question in a minute. Uh, Although this naturally, but when we think of pedagogical translanguaging, it's important to have some strategies how we are going to use translanguaging in the class. All right. So that's an element that I believe a bit neglected, can be focused more. And there's another terms like code mixing, code switching as well that are used as an alternative to translanguaging at times. But when we think of these terms, that indicates that codes are already fixed. All right. While translanguaging says the meaning is first believed and then the language is used. So in code mixing, switching, the language is first, meaning making is second. On the contrary, in these terms, translanguaging, the meaning is first and language is secondary. And on this note, it's over to you, Sonali.
Thank you. So we will look at some of the strategies which actually use the components of translanguaging. And the first one we have here is where we bring in the local context into the classroom and thereby give the learners a personalized experience. It's likely to be effective at the primary level, but you could also try it out at the preparatory or the middle school classes, right? And we will show you an activity that uses this particular strategy of using the local contexts, and it's called the Language Adventure Map, right? Okay. Now, this activity connects language to real-world contexts of the learner and builds visual and spatial skills as well. Now, in addition, it's also a low resource activity where you can do with just about chart papers and sketch pens. So that comes easy for us. The teacher, how does she go about it? She invites students to make a map of the things that are important to the students. If it is an individual task at this stage, they can draw local landmarks, parks, grandparents' homes, or whatever is comfortable for them and familiar to them. And if it is going to be a pair work or a group task, a shared location like their school premises or the school library may be used. And next, students and the teacher, they label them using a mix of the local language or languages and English. Now, following this, the teacher can hold a conversation with students, inviting them to describe the place in a language they are comfortable in, scaffolding their language usage. So there could be word walls, visuals, gestures, cognates, multilingual sentence frames, multilingual glossaries, whatever, right? So what do you think? Do you use something like this? Have you tried using something like this? Put in some of your ideas in the chat box. All right. Cuisine with food. Yes, because there's so much diversity there. So Snehal, you could try it out. Festivals, right? Songs, music. Okay, Poonam, can we just go back to the slide, Suyog? Just for a quick second. Yeah. So see, there are so many ways, there are so many variations to this idea where you can bring in the local context. Different themes. So you see, we get facilitated by the repertoires that we all bring to a classroom, our linguistic repertoire. So I think it's all about using them, and in a systematic way, that's what makes it a strategy. Shall we move to the next strategy then?
Sure. And the second strategy that we are going to discuss, that is providing support in language production tasks. So whenever we expect students to produce language, that may be in the written form or in the spoken form, there are two types of processes going on. The first one, that is something that they want to express. And secondly, identifying the correct language to that expression. All right. So when we think or when we support students in these language production tasks, that helps students where they think of the content and the language part where they are scaffolded or supported by the teachers. Let's see how that strategy works with the help of an example. The example I'm taking here, co-creation of story. The objectives of these activities is like communication where students use different languages in the classroom and build content in the language use. And let's see how this goes. The material is there. The teacher provides clues such as pictures, prompts, something about which students can work together and produce a story. And students try to produce or suggest sentences. This is a whole class activity, so students can just tell the sentences to the teacher. Teacher will anchor the discussion and he'll take the sentences on the board. And while doing that, when the teacher is writing the sentences on the board, he'll also make the necessary adjustments or corrections in the sentences, helping refining the student's language output. And ultimately, as a whole group, the student will co-create the story. And again, this process will help students to discuss different endings, different views, and how the language is used in the story. So what we did here is the entire group engaged in the story that helped them to load and of content as well, and teachers scaffolded the language. And this is how the strategy work, where the production is supported by teacher or maybe at times by the students. And can you think of some more activities that can also go with this strategy where students are producing and that language production is supported by maybe teacher or other peers? So please use the chat box and share what other activities can you think where this thing is happening. Yes. Collaborative study writing, random words to build a plot. Good. Energy saving Ludo games, story writing, storytelling, and narration. Yeah, now it's flowing. Good. Dialogue writing, complete the conversation, brainstorming. Mini drama, I will active participation activities, role playing, haiku making. Nice, interesting. Day-to-day activities and regular communication. Popcorn method. That's interesting. That seems interesting. Diary writing, role play. Picture talk. Okay, that can be done with lower classes. Process writing, good one. Flash fiction, team activities. Okay, with that, can we move to the next strategy, Sonali?
All right, let's take the third one. Now, this strategy showcases how cross-linguistic peer support helps cognition and construction, especially by using the different languages that the students bring to their classrooms. Now, we have chosen a specific activity. It's called collaborative reading, which would actually be very effective at the secondary level classes, but of course, you can also try it out in the middle school. And it's an activity that can be used for any subject whatsoever, right? So you can use it in your content teaching classes as well. Now, the students use diverse linguistic resources to understand the text or the story from different perspectives, and then they present their interpretation and analysis in English, right? So the main construction work happens in a familiar language of their choice. Now, how do we go about it? Look at the picture carefully, right? To begin with, the teacher will choose a level appropriate story or text, right? And it would be a good idea to pick a story or text where there are different aspects for discussion to happen like this, right? Among groups of peers. So if you look at this picture has a particular story, the elves and the shoemaker, and there are groups in the class, and each group looks closely and analyzes a specific aspect of the story. So some look at the characters, another group is looking at the setting in the story, another at the problems that emerge, and another group finally comes up with solutions, right? So the text has been divided in this way so that each group can work on a specific aspect, and hence it is a collaborative effort. And of course, when forming the groups, the teacher will have to decide whether he or she wants to use linguistically homogeneous groups or heterogeneous groups, depending on the languages that students speak in the classroom. Let's look at the process now. Get the whole class to read the story or the text. And of course, you have divided your class into groups with linguistically diverse or homogeneous students. And then each group will be asked to discuss a specific aspect of the story, which I just mentioned, in their home languages. So allow this to happen in their home languages. And then they reassemble. Each group will design a chart in English with, mind maps, illustrations, labels, timelines, whatever they find convenient. And finally, each group will take turns to showcase their work. So you see, the processing happens in their home languages, and if they are comfortable, also in English, but the production is, mostly in English, right? So this is how this strategy works, and it is a cross-linguistic peer support activity. It's collaborative reading. Now, maybe you could share some ideas too, where you have tried using this kind of a peer support, multilinguistic peer support in your classrooms. All right, some nice ideas coming up. See, think, wonder, yes, that can be done too. In fact, during the processing stage, if you could use graphic organizers, it makes it, the discussion is structured. And they know, even if they are using their own languages, they know how to stay within the boundaries of the conversation. Role plays, yes. Interviews, group discussions, problem-solving discussions. All right, so like I said, it's largely up to you to decide whether you want a heterogeneous group or a homogeneous group, whatever is more convenient for you, right? Some
That
more
brings us
ideas?
to the...
Yeah.
Yes, Sonali, please.
Yeah. So there's a lot of ideas there. Yes, Suyog.
Thank you. So
Let's
that
take it
brings
together.
us to the conclusion of this workshop. So in this workshop, we have started by discussing 4 common beliefs and what research says about these 4 common beliefs. Then we quickly went through a couple of definitions of translanguaging, and then we have discussed 3 strategies how we can use translanguaging in the classroom. The first strategy we discussed, that was bringing the local context into the classroom, and the activity we saw, that was language adventure map. For the second strategy, that was providing support in language production tasks, and the example activity we saw, that was co-creation of story. And the last strategy we saw, that was cross-linguistic peer support, and the example activity we saw, that was collaborative reading. And that brings us to the next section, that is question and reflection. So it's over to you, Titiksha.
Thank you for that, Shonali, and thank you, Suyog. Firstly, I would like to, highlight the wonderful responses we have been receiving in the chat so far from our very proactive audience here. And they have, in fact, been telling us, for instance, I have Hema Ravi, Mohammad Rezwan, Kushal Mishra, all of them almost agreeing that these are wonderful strategies. Some of them have applied them already in their classrooms, and some would want to do that in the future. Coming to our questions, we have some of them in the Q&A box as well. So I will take up the first question from Suvarna Lakshmi. They ask, how should a teacher manage many languages of the students in a multilingual classroom and support their learning if the teacher is not familiar with the language that the students know and use? Perhaps, Shonali, you would like to answer this one for us?
Yes, I think that's a very, very pertinent question, and it would be something that would be uppermost in most of your minds. Now, your role, it's important to remember, is to create a space where multilingualism is valued, right? Even if you don't speak the languages yourself, you don't need to be a multilingual to implement translanguaging, right? You can encourage peer discussions where students explain concepts in their home languages before presenting them in English. And you can use support from within the group itself. So if you don't know Marathi, for instance, you could ask the other students who know Marathi to give you support as well, right, when they use it. You can also integrate visuals and gestures and multilingual resources like translated keywords to support learning, right? And I did mention some other supports you can use, like the multilingual glossary. And if you do have a smartphone, nothing like it. That too comes in handy. So would you like to add to what I just said, Suyog?
Now you almost covered all the points. So thank you very much for that.
Right, great. I can see one question that Pushpalata has asked us in the chat, so I'm just taking that up. They have asked, can translanguaging create disparities in the classroom where students have unequal exposure to multiple languages?
That's
Perhaps, Suyog, you
interesting.
would like to take that?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. That's interesting standpoint. But honestly saying, I still can't visualize a classroom where translanguaging is creating disparities. On the contrary, maybe using more English can create disparities if we are using language in a manner that helps students. All right. So the idea is not to make it mechanical. It's like how we communicate in day-to-day lives, all right, and bringing it into the classroom. And if we think in that way, so if translanguaging in the classroom with that logic, if it can create disparities, that same thing might be happening in the society as well, but it does not. So translanguaging is already happening. What we are thinking is to use it in a pedagogical terms, pedagogical approach to support and enhance the English language learning. I hope that answers the question.
Absolutely. Thanks for that, Suyog. And just to add here, we have several publications and research at the British Council. We will be sharing resource links with you, which actually do highlight that how multilingualism, in fact, creates an inclusive learning environment rather than a divisive one. With that, I can also see another question that has propped up in the chat. Um, sorry, in the Q&A box, this one from Meena Sridharan, who says, basis of course, the collaborating reading strategy, how much of an intervention would the teacher have to do? And how would they manage the scaffolding without interfering with the learning outcomes? Shonali, perhaps you would like to answer this one?
Uh, well, see, I think during the within group discussion, that's where the teacher can just could just about, facilitate, try to understand what is it that they are talking about, whether they are within the topic, right? And they are analyzing it in the right direction. So that kind of facilitation, as would happen even in a non-multilingual classroom, is still there, right? And of course, we're at the stage where there are instructions to be given, that is where the teacher also comes in. So that is, again, like a normal facilitation section. But otherwise, the students are left to their own languages, to use their own resources, to have a discussion, to co-construct their analysis, which is why we are saying that the teacher would have to group them based on their, according to her judgment or his judgment of how the linguistically diverse students would help each other to construct this particular body of knowledge. So I think those are the spaces where the teacher can give support.
Thanks for that, Sonali. Perhaps we have time for one more question here. I can see one in the Q&A box again from Poonam Daga. They are asking for young learners who are in, for instance, classes 1 to class 5. How can we develop strong vocabulary in English while simultaneously using other regional languages such as Hindi? Because they say the problems we face are that even though children can read, they cannot often comprehend. Would Suyog want to answer this one?
Sure, Diksha, and thank you very much for this question, Poonam ma'am. And that appears a concern that if I'm using Hindi or some other local language, how will that help in learning English? Again, the idea is using the entire linguistic repertoire and enhancing it. All right. So imagine that you have a thread and pearls, and you are stringing the pearls. It is like you are stringing more pearls as you are using English in your day-to-day classroom activities. All right. So if we use entirely English, that might be out of context, something out of context for students, so that they cannot see how it is going. But if we are giving context with English, then that English is have more chances to get stuck and get produced as well. So idea is giving context with Hindi and adding and enhancing the vocabulary simultaneously. And that's how the translanguaging helps in the primary classes. And particularly in those classes, what I have seen, acknowledging becomes really very much important. When you acknowledge that there are different languages being spoken and you can express yourselves using different languages and simultaneously enhance the linguistic repertoire, that helps students in production of the language. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Just scanning through our Facebook section as well, our comments there, and many of them have mentioned that diversity of language use is fine, but only as long as it furthers the user's acquaintance with English. Is that true? I mean, that's perhaps their question here. And there seems to be one more. Perhaps we'll first let one of you answer this one. In terms of the diversity that we see, that
So
multilingualism
I think,
promotes.
yes, Pratiksha, this question is from Facebook, I think, from Indrajit Bose, and they talk about uh, furthering their acquaintance with English being the aim.
Yes,
I don't know what the speakers feel about this, but I don't think that is the aim in every classroom, right? And these strategies could be used to teach any language or any subject.
absolutely.
Multilingualism can be a norm in your classroom. Depending on, of course, you will eventually have a target language when you're teaching a language in a language classroom. So, of course, the aim will be to teach that target language through the available multilingual resources in the classroom. Or if you're teaching a subject, it will be through multilingual strategies or approaches to teach that subject or that concept in the classroom. So it's not always with the aim of teaching English per se. It could be any language that you choose to teach.
Thank you for answering that for us, Priya. With
Pleasure.
that, I can see some more comments in, of course, the chat box. Everybody sharing their views on the activities, the strategies that we have shared today. Um, I can also see some, feedback already popping in. So, with that, I think we can share the feedback link for you all to fill in. Please do submit your feedback, your response. Basis on what you have shared with us so far, we will be very excited to hear more from you. and get to know a lot more of your responses from your feedback.
That's right. Maybe we can also stop recording the session
Yes.
now. And we'll also try and share some resources from